And hello, loves. Welcome back to part 2 of The Chosen Season 2 review. And I thank you for coming back. And let's go ahead and get right on into it. And episode 5, ooh boy, this one definitely something. Warning in advance for those who have triggers to SA and or demonic things, because yeah, this is got a bit of both. We start off with our girl Mary as she's gathering some fruit and reading the verse they have been trying to memorize. She notices a Roman guard who doesn't notice her but is enough to send her into a tivy. She has major PTSD from a past experience that led into her possession, strictly show related as it was put in for her background but not known for certain if that happened. We do know she was possessed but not specifically what caused it to happen. But it did indeed happen to many women back in the day, like it does now, and Jewish women. To be more specific, in this kind of area, it was kind of a habit of the ruling people to take advantage of the women and people they take over, so yeah. As someone who has had a similar experience, I can completely understand this reaction. Sometimes triggers just make you forget everything and put you back in the place again. But the shift then heads into our guy Jesse from the episode prior as he's giving his testimony to the Sanhedrin. They are pounding him about getting information, but he thankfully doesn't have much to give. When he heads out, our other guy Atticus catches him and talks to him for a moment. He's super friendly and encouraging, but completely trying to get tabs on Jesse's brother Simon Z. He wants to know why he would have dropped a mission so simply when many zealots train their whole lives to complete one as such. Heck, this is exactly what our boy did. So it has to mean something, and our guy Atticus is wanting to know what that something is and if it's something that is going to be dangerous and he needs to know about it. So even though Simon Z is out, Atticus isn't so quick to let him go. It's Simon Z who we end up following next as he's in the woods before he hears a strange man. It's a possessed man wandering who begs him to off him, but Simon Z doesn't. He realizes that if the man is still having lucid moments, that he's still fighting, maybe more than another would be able to, and geez, I get it, but dang man. Like, the man is suffering, so I get why he would want to be, but at the same time, I get why Simon Z wouldn't, and at the same time, this man just, let's hope that he ends up getting some peace from this. He does give him condolences and hopes that the man can find someone who would do a better job at helping him. He's just so chill about it though, R2 definitely is not one to be stirred easily. Now with Jesus and a few, they are looking for John the Baptist before he jumps out at them to scare them. It's just so funny. He is definitely a character and one that I love. They play him well like all of the other characters. Jesus is meeting with him before they go off on their own ways. Back at camp, the girls are studying with Mary still being affected by earlier's incident. She's teaching Rama how to read, but keeps getting easily frustrated. Trauma will do it to you, take hold and make even the smallest of normal tasks easily stressful. That's why we need to be careful not to hold on to troubles we aren't meant to share with someone we can trust so they can help us through. It's hard to handle things alone. I have to say those struggles aren't as heavy when you have someone to rely on, someone special to help you snap out of those dark moments. Yes, I'm talking about you now, Chill Jacks. I'm trying to record. But yeah, when we don't have that someone, and even if you do, it's best to rely on God with these things. Anything heavy and even things that aren't, we can have a habit of thinking we can carry something or that it's not that heavy, but not realizing how difficult things are actually becoming. So trust him to lift those burdens. John and Jesus talking alone, they definitely act like family. John's fully devoted to Jesus, but curious why he seems to be taking things slow, in his opinion, why he's not causing scenes the same way that John is. The moment is sweet, and we can see that the care they have for each other, and definitely reminds me of moments I've had with my sister. How you can care for someone, but still be at odds with them still be on their side, but passionate about things in different ways, at loving odds, to say the least. Family is really great. About the one group we can be in conflict at times, but still love and care for each other. That goes with family in general, found or blood. I have to say, sometimes it's the found that can be better than the blood at times. It's just important to know who truly is and who truly isn't, who actually has your best interest and who is just using you. Be careful, loves, to discern the difference, because you can lose so much of yourself if you don't. Back with the girls, Mary apologizes to Rhema and opens up to her about earlier episode she had in the day. Things seem like they are getting to healing before she begins to get a migraine, and we hear the same man from earlier. Our poor girl, it's just not her day. He comes and things go into chaos real quick. He even directs some words at Mary and talks about communicating with the same ones who possessed her. She's the one taking hold of the situation, though, being a real boss about it, but the man steps a little too close, and our new guy, Simon Z, cuts in to help everyone out. Sadly, the dude pins Simon Z on the ground. Jesus comes along to better it completely, calling the demons out of the man entirely. Things are silent, of course, before John shouts in excitement because, of course, he thinks it's pretty epic. Jesus goes to the dude to comfort him before we notice Mary slipping away while everyone is focused on Jesus and the man. Let's just say it's the last thing to make our girl finally slip. John is the one to make comment about our new Simon, and he's just standing there awestruck before fully devoting himself to Jesus. And another come to Jesus moment, but he's not all impressed by the other disciples. Jesus directs everyone what to do while he walks off to talk to our new Simon. Simon Z is quick to ask if Jesus is the Messiah, and even though he's not so easily understanding the exactitude of what Jesus is trying to do by not evoking violence on Rome, he still accepts to follow him. He's even more confused why Jesus wants him if he doesn't need his special skills after Jesus tosses his dagger into the water. It's sweet, but our boy's on board, just as lost as the rest of them with knowing things. He fits right in. Our guy Atticus is also confused about everything as he was listening in on them. This intrigues him even more. Our girl Mary is off to the city and finds herself heading into a bar, finding herself falling right back into where she was when Jesus redeemed her before, something else that's not so uncommon. We many times find ourselves slipping back into old habits we kicked when we are frightened and unsure where to head, but choosing that we are too broken to fall to God. But listen, you are never too far into the dark to ask for his help. Like the verse that we're learning, there is nowhere you can be where God isn't willing to be with us. No amount of damage is too much or sin too great that he doesn't want to help you through. God is a father that wants to be with you always, so please let him in. Atticus now is on Jesus' tail instead of Simon Z's, as Jesus is now the curiosity. He's the what of why Simon Z stopped his mission, so he's the one needing to be figured out of if he's dangerous or not. Our Pharisees are in the background through this episode trying to get their ways in order to get Jesus in trouble. They can't quite get things in order as they seem to keep hitting walls, but the determination is still there. Let's just say many know how it ends, but it's not their will that pushes it to be, just a way that pieces needed to lay so our redemption could be settled. Our main Simon begins to introduce Simon Z to the group before he takes note that Mary's missing. He takes the news to Jesus before Jesus tells him that he needs to search for her. Our boy Matthew tags along because he might have a little crush. Episode 6. We start off in 1008 BC as the lead priest is changing out the bread of the presence. It's something they needed to do every week to keep it fresh, and the lead priests, males, who would eat it in the presence of God, as even though it was exchanged for fresher bread, it was still holy and needed to be taken as such. Only the lead priest's male bloodline, and only if they were ceremonially clean, which is a tale of its own, but it was a serious matter that God took seriously as a form of worship. He takes his son to eat with him, but another Israelite comes in a panic. It's David, King David, but before he was king and while he was still running off from Saul. He asked for the bread, which is a big deal because David did not match the requirements for eating the bread of the presence, let alone the rest of his men. So David doing this is super against the law, but he and his men are starving, so the priest breaks and gives it to him with the promise that they haven't done the do with anyone, another requirement for how the bread was to be eaten. We fade out of this and right into with our boys, Simon and Matthew. After the introduction, they took up the night in a stable and now are back on the hunt for Mary. Matthew tells of already asking around about Mary, and the description he gives really gives off some vibes of him truly being smitten. Simon picks up on it too, definitely something that seems to soften him towards Matthew a bit more. We meet with Mary, mother, and Rama for a moment as they are gathering plants. We get a quick moment between the two as Mary encourages Rama with her worry about the other Mary, telling that our God is someone not to grant wishes or our every desire, but to trust even when things are hard. Our God is personal instead of one we should go to just when we need to be pulled out of a hard situation. We also take note here that they are running low on food, something that comes to play more later. With the other Mary now, she's in a tavern gambling with a bunch of men and taking them for their money. They aren't so pleased, to say the least, but yeah, our girl's got some skill. There is a moment in the midst of it all where things just click with her. It's shown in a way many can relate, especially like myself at least. I've had these moments, that moment when you're in sin after being saved, like that what am I doing back here moment where you dissociate for a moment and things almost feel like a dream or more so like a nightmare. Like that kind of moment where the disconnect from the situation as things just click into place. She decides she doesn't want to stay and packs up to leave, but as I said, the men aren't so happy, or at least one in particular. He wants to win back his money, but she bucks up to him and it backfires as he goes to show her her place as a woman and puts her back into the mindset of fright before things settle and she heads out scared. Back with the larger group, once again, the worry of food is brought up as Thomas counts out the last bit that they have and barely portions out for 11. Andrew tries to talk about his experience with John the Baptist and how being a disciple is something where he's used to eating well or going days without, so one boy's not worried about it, but his mind is somewhere else with John off to basically hand himself over to Herod the king, as his last mention was that he was going to call him out on his sin. Something that was, a big deal and most anyone would be scared of, but it seems our boy Andrew is doing all the worry for his old rabbi. A conversation between brothers James and John. It's another set of worries as James speaks about him not so sure that he's doing what he should at times and if he's truly cut out for being a disciple. This episode really is packed full of worried characters. It's not long before our searching boys venture into the same tavern Mary was and hear about a woman they, or I should say Simon, takes instantly as Mary. They leave out to look more for her before she calls out to them, confused as if they aren't actually there. The girl, still pretty hammered, even pukes, but her boy Matthew, who I should add is a big germaphobe, he ends up holding back her hair to help her and takes off his scarf for her to use, and is so sweet in this moment, and our boy is definitely falling hard. Such a sweet dynamic for him. I do have to say it comes to no surprise with her being one of the few who actually are nice to him. Mary regrets what she did, but now speaks of worry of coming back. Another worrier. She feels it's not her place to go back, how she messed up after Jesus already fixed her, so going back now is more like she's thrown away her salvation, something that many struggle with now, but it's always important to go back. We are called to forgive everyone countless times because it is a reflection of how God does to us. He forgives countless times. Don't be too worried about what you've done, just go to him. He wants you to, which shows all the more with how Jesus instantly forgives Mary when she comes back, telling her how he never expected her not to fall. how we will fall, but it's important to go to him after you do, to ask for forgiveness and strength to move on better. He forgives our Mary and gives her a big hug. And have I said how much I would love a hug with Jesus? Like, for real, seeing this in the show all the time makes it all the more something I can't wait to one day do. The first thing I want to do in heaven, like, seriously. Jesus is torn up when Mary meets him, but not because of her. He found out that his cousin John got locked up. Something that also stresses our boy Andrew out all the more. It's like a complete 180 of his character in this season. It's such a sweet and sour kind of thing, showing such a sunshine character turning into a ball of worry because of their love for someone. Like, oh, and we still have the background of our Pharisees trying to get Jesus into trouble. Thomas ends up telling Jesus that the meal that night will be their last, but Jesus tells him not to worry and to tell everyone that they will be going to the synagogue in the morning to pray, something that seems so simple but turns out so much more. When they do go, Jesus sees a man with a crippled hand, feeling a little bit spicy this morning. Oh, I should say it is Shabbat. And part of that is that you are not supposed to work or heal on it. But yeah, our dude does. Jesus, for real, did this in reality, like another miracle on Shabbat on top of what happens next. Like, remember, we didn't have food any today, like, and less of a full meal the night prior because of the portions not being equivalent to the amount of people. So our group is hungry on top of hungry. Simon in particular is caught up in the excitement of the miracle when they're leaving, and they are walking through a grain field outside the synagogue. He grabs some, eating some, but because he had to technically harvest it to eat it, and that is a big no-no as well on Shabbat, it's instant regret. He wasn't thinking when he did it, and Jesus gives them all permission that sends the Pharisees of the synagogue that they were already heated from the miracle to blow even more when seeing this. Oh, that's not even the best of it. When Jesus brings up the point of David eating the bread that we saw at the beginning of the episode, how it's more important to both do good and to allow people to eat than it is to follow the rules of no work. He even says the whole line, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. Ooh boy. Oh, and Sabbath being another name for Shabbat. Just a different word, but yeah, same meaning. But yeah, this is the thing that finally strikes them speechless. They don't think much will come out of them claiming anything about this, with them being such a small synagogue, but something that might come into play later. It really is sad how often many think they are doing for God when they're doing against him instead. But yeah. And that is the end of that episode, so let's get on into episode 7. We start off with our guy Atticus as he takes one of the notices up talking about Quintus wanting Jesus for questioning. He heads straight to Quintus and they begin talking as Quintus tries to do a quick catch up, but Atticus isn't much for it. Like, our dude is like, yeah, no, let's stop with the pleasantries. He wants straight to the point, and he tells him what he knows thus far about Jesus. We're then with our disciples as they have some guys getting fish while the others are trying to listen to Jesus' instructions about his upcoming sermon. Our brothers Simon and Andrew are the ones that are out getting fish. Our boy Andrew is definitely on the frustrated side as he's afraid of what could happen to Jesus after the commotion from before. John being locked up has him in a worried mess, and this only grows worse when Roman soldiers come to take Jesus away. Simon, on the other hand, is pretty level-headed, seeming to know that he needs to be more so on the level-headed side, with his brother already taking the worried side. Shmuel is still on the hunt for evidence against Jesus. He's hoping to find more healings Jesus had done on Shabbat, as it's a good thing to pin against him for his case, as it would count as breaking the law. Torah law specifically, as Romans don't care if work is to be done on Shabbat. The only reason in season 1 that they were all bent out of shape with the whole fishing on Shabbat was because, yeah, they weren't getting taxes because Jews aren't supposed to be doing work on Shabbat. So with that being the rule, they weren't qualifying their catch to be taxed. So it's just more so like, yeah, we're not getting our input, so yeah, that's why we're against this. But as far as in all the stuff on this side, yeah, Romans don't care, just whatever. But Shmuel gathering the evidence he is, it will make the case to the Sanhedrin that Jesus is needing more action against him, more serious. When being taken away, Jesus is sure to tell his disciples that he will be back. But once he's gone, they aren't all that keen on letting his words settle their worry. Most of them listen, but when Andrew and Simon come back, Andrew is back to feuding and trying to figure out what to do. Simon Z suggests that they could break him out. Andrew places blame on Mary for leaving, and Simon is quick to call him out on it. He's sent into a complete tibby. It just goes to show how fast many will flounder when put in a position where they feel helpless, blaming, squabbling, wanting to make their own paths. So many things besides holding on to the word given to us is hard, but we need to make sure to hold on to God and his word. Stress and worry are only going to make things worse, never better. Even in a storm, or I guess especially then, when you're struggling for air, you'll only drown if you panic. It's a sound mind and calm nature that can help you stay afloat, and that's always God. Andrew heads off to town, and Philip is quick behind him, knowing that he needs someone with him. It's not long after that the rest begin to unwind too, trying to figure out what to do. Not so ironically, it's our girl Mary that's holding on to Jesus' words the most. She tells how she regretted leaving, and that specifically is what shows her that listening to Jesus telling them that he'll be back is what needs to be done. She trusts him and knows he wouldn't have said it if he didn't already know. We are next with Andrew and Philip as they come across the woman and the paralytic man Jesus healed in season 1. She's claiming of Jesus' wonder and their testimony. Andrew's once again worried and pulls her to the side to tell her of what happened to Jesus and how they need to lay low on their speech of Jesus because of how it can make things worse. We even get Yusef as he then comes to warn against Shmuel's plans of trying to use her testimony against him. Her healed friend tells her that they need to split up. She asks to go with Andrew and Philip, and we have another addition to our group. Jesus is brought to Quintus, and it's not as bad as we thought. It's just basically a quick talk and him warning Jesus to stop causing issues for him. He actually quite likes many of the things Jesus has done, but the pain's there as well. Like, he has to be like, hey, yeah, you need to stop doing this. He would like to keep Jesus around, but only if the pain stopped. Of course, our dude is mindful of his words, not specifically saying that he'll stop the pains, but also not causing conflict that would deem it as if he is intentionally causing Rome pains. So the worry is off the table for now. We know how the story ends, so we also know that it's not Rome technically that causes it. Atticus, though, thinks Quintus is a fool for not worrying any longer about Jesus, and I mean, I get it. Then again, he's not so much for Quintus in general. He definitely looks down on him, even more so with Quintus not being a superior or holding any threat towards him. His curiosity stays alongside his tale on Jesus. Our group in the town now turns back as Philip finds out that Jesus no longer is there. The others stay up sticking to worry before Jesus calls them out on it for doing so. More specifically, their pause on things instead of continuing on with what they were supposed to be doing, saying how they can't just shut down when things are hard because things will be hard. It's a guarantee as a follower. He then praises them as John asks about if he will give them a prayer to help as John the Baptist did with his followers. We end out as Jesus wakes Matthew as he wants his help prepping for a sermon. A sweet gesture, as I'm sure he didn't really need it, something that can be a teaching moment. And then again, even if you don't actually need help, many times bopping off ideas off another is a good step in many creative processes. It's one thing that I love to do with my stories, just saying them aloud. At least I can help get them in line better. Like, James is one of my favorites to do with this, but having people in your life to simply listen while you brainstorm is a great thing to have. Of course, you're one of my favorite people too. I mean, you're actually here, so in a way, it kind of makes you my actual favorite person. And the season finale, episode 8. We start off in a set of land trying to be bought by a couple of characters we will get into more so later in the episode. They seem genuine until after they have the land, and we find out that, yeah, they are scammers. More so the one in charge, as he seems to be teaching the other the ropes of their work. The apprentice, as we will call him for now, doesn't feel good about what they are doing, but still tries his best to follow through. Our lead guy definitely is not a good influence, but maybe things will change for our apprentice, but that's something we'll see more about the further this episode goes. We're next with our group as they are going about their day, still straining with their relationship with one another. I guess it doesn't help that 2 sets of them are siblings, so it leads into that with the rest in a way of sibling love not being so kind at times. Our poor boy Andrew is on the extra sour side for sure. Our girl Mary is still struggling, but we find out that she is actually memorizing more scripture as her way to kind of help in those times of troubles. Something I know all too well is needed. The more you have saved in your memory, the easier it is to rise when you need to have something to cling to. I've noticed at times of trouble, it will just pop in many times when I have forgotten I even had it held in my heart. 1 Peter 5:7 is by far one of my favorites to keep to me in those times. We get another sweet scene with a set of characters as Thomas tells our new girl Tamar that he made sure to get some apricots that they found along with apples because he knows that they are Rayma's favorites. We know even more now in case it wasn't so clear of his affections for her. Just let's hope things progress the way they need in between them because they are for sure one of my favorite coupling besides our main Simon and Enid, that is. Our set of guys from the beginning are in a tavern as the apprentice shows even more his weary for their fooling of the other guy earlier. His partner tries even more to convince him to settle fine with their work. Our guy isn't so keen on it. He wants to do something important with his life, something more than simply making money, especially at the cost of others' misery. The lead guy offers him an advance and tells him to take a break, hoping that it will help him out of his head to be able to come back stronger. We even find out that our guy is an orphan, so yeah, all the feels for him. Nathaniel, Thad, and little James are on the hunt for land for Jesus' sermon. Thad and James are quick to agree with a part of land they come across, but Nathaniel isn't so certain. He thinks it isn't so pleasant, to say the least, which is all the reason why the other two assume it's perfect. Jesus has a tendency to take something unconventional and even horrid and turn it into something special, and to turn that kind of someone into something better. In a way, that land is like ourselves. We're all poor in nature, but with God and Jesus, we become something far better, like all of his disciples. And more scheming on the side of Shmuel. They're trying to find a side of the Sanhedrin that will back them, hoping at first to have the side of the less harsh leaning in the synagogue before they end up having to turn the harsher. Basic politics. Whoever will back you. They don't completely agree with the head's attitude when it comes to things, but many times it's the cost people are willing to pay simply to move forward with what they assume is the right aim. Jesus and Matthew go over his sermon. Matthew asks about the confusing part and tells how most of Jesus' sermon seems to be harsh criticism, a thing many seem to forget or hold so much harder on. When talking about Jesus nowadays, it seems many are on one extreme or the other with Jesus, thinking he was a lover who never held his hand against anyone, or one who held his hands hard against everyone. Neither is a full picture to properly see the real him. We already don't get to know his full glory quite yet, so claiming an even smaller piece makes it all that harder to know his true character, God's character. I have to say, the more you read the Bible, the more you realize the cherry-picked nature God seems to be in today's day and time. Jesus very much is love. God is love. But he also is justice, which can't come without discipline, without a firm hand at times. He's not for living your life the way you want and still coming to heaven. He's more so, I know where you're coming from and the ways you fall, but come to me regardless and I'll help you grow and hold you on the days you can't hold yourself. He's the I'll flip the tables, but open my arms to the sinners who want a better life kind of God. Our group meets quickly with our guys from earlier as they help them get the land that they were needing and ghosting right after. This helps our apprentice before they decide to check out the sermon. Maybe something he needs to fully pull away from the other. It's the rest of our disciples that go out to spread the word about the sermon, which Quintus is not so keen about when he takes note of it. Another project from our guy Nathaniel, we flash between spreading the word and his building of the stage Jesus will be using the following day. Our disciples come back worrying again. Jesus is still gone when they come back, and they're worried the sermon isn't actually going to happen, something we ourselves need to be careful of. If we are called to do something, unless God himself gives word that we need to change the direction, we need to stay on the path given. If it was God putting you on the path, that is, if he said to go left, stay left even when doubt tries to set in to turn you right. It's hard, but stay on the last word given instead of the doubt. God is with you, he hears you, he sees you, and he wouldn't send you down a way without further instructions. You just have to be patient and trust him. It's the same thing here. Jesus still had full plans for the sermon. He's only doing what he needs for it. As he said before to them, he gave word of what needs to happen, so trust that that's the case. It's hard not to worry and be anxious, but even that can be taken away by calling on to God and clinging to him and his word. It's the next day, people instantly start flooding in, friends and families that we've seen before, and our guys too from earlier. Our apprentice even gets wrapped up with a couple of our friends, Barnaby and Shula, as they take him to the back, and he then left there. Maybe another new addition? Oh yes, but one seriously bittersweet as he is the last, and I really wasn't thinking much about it the first time around. Judas, the name drop is everything, but kind of funny because I didn't know that it was the Judas the first time watching this, because I remembered there's two Judases, and I didn't realize that our second Judas was already in the group, because I forgot that he also was our boy Thad. So yeah, it is a great drop though, if you are actually realizing it in the moment, that he is the final disciple. Even better that they purposely stayed away from naming it until then. Like, we completely did not have his name until he introduces himself. We end right before the sermon starts, and it's a good way to finalize the season for the start of the next. And that is it with this review, part 2, and the season 2 review in general. And I appreciate all of you that have stayed thus far, not to mention that have popped on to this one. And yeah, thank you all for all the loves and all the supports, and that is it. I pray blessings upon you all. Goodbye.